I still remember the exact moment I saw those messages on her phone. We'd been planning the wedding for months, full of excitement and future dreams. I'd always thought she was perfect, beautiful, funny, caring. But that day, everything spun out of control. I was sitting on the sofa waiting for her to finish getting ready. She had her phone in her hand, giggling at something. I didn't think much of it at first, just a normal morning routine. But then I caught a glimpse of her screen. The message preview flashed on the lock screen and my stomach dropped. It was from my brother. The message was intimate, casual yet infuriating. "Can't wait to see you tonight," with a wink emoji. I froze. My mind refused to process what I'd just read. My palms went clammy and the room suddenly felt too small. The noise from the TV blurred out, replaced by a pounding in my ears. I stared at her, trying to find any sign of guilt or deceit. She was still smiling, brushing her hair, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I clenched my fists, felt the rough fabric of my jeans dig into my palms. I wanted to scream, to shout, to wake her up from whatever fantasy she was living in. Instead, I quietly tucked the phone back onto the table, my mind racing for a reaction that wouldn't blow up everything right then and there. "Are you okay?" she asked, pinning me with a bright smile. "Yeah," I managed to croak out, but the word felt hollow. My throat was tight and my stomach churned like a washing machine on spin cycle. I couldn't look her in the eyes. How could she be so casual, so relaxed? She didn't know I'd seen her secret. I stayed silent, the image of those texts burned into my mind. The betrayal hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt everything turn cold, my heart pounding, the sharp sting of shock in my chest. I wanted to confront her then, to rip the bandage off and see her squirm, but I knew that wasn't the right move. I needed to think, to plan. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to her smile, the way she had looked at him. Was I just a fool? Did I ever really know her? Or was she always hiding something this dark? I felt like I was falling into a pit I couldn't climb out of, and the worst part, I didn't even have definitive proof, just those blasted messages waiting to be exposed. Over the next few days, I watched her more carefully. Every touch, every word, every glance. It was like I was trying to decode a language I no longer understood. But I knew this wasn't just a one-time slip-up. No, this was something much deeper, a betrayal that cut to the bone. I started noticing little things, how she'd suddenly be busy when I called, the odd phone calls after midnight, the way she'd hurriedly hide her phone when I entered the room. One evening I finally confronted her. I had to. I slid the phone across the table while she was brushing her teeth. Her eyes widened, then went cold. "Who's this?" I asked, voice rough. She glanced down, her face paling slightly. "That's nothing," she mumbled, trying to snatch it up. "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I saw the messages. The ones from your brother." Her face twisted into a look of annoyance, then defiance. "It's just a joke, you're overreacting." "Joke, really? You think I'm stupid? I saw the way you two look at each other. The messages, the secret calls, the late nights. How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer right away, just looked away, silent but guilty. That silence was worse than any shouting match. It confirmed everything I'd suspected. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I realized then that I was done pretending I didn't see it. I had to decide what was next. But I knew deep down that this was the beginning of something much darker. I wasn't just going to walk away, not without making her pay. Would you like me to continue with the next part? That night, I sat alone in the dark, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My mind kept circling around one thought: how do I make her pay for this? I'd always been the kind of guy who believed in doing the right thing, but this was different. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. The betrayal cut so deep, I could feel it in my bones. My stomach churned and my palms got sweaty just thinking about what she'd done. I needed a plan. I couldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't matter. Not after seeing those messages, not after feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. I had to get even, but I had to be smart about it. I sat up, cracked my knuckles, and started piecing things together. First, I gathered evidence. I went through her phone, backup messages, social media accounts, anything that could give me leverage. I needed proof that this wasn't a one-time mistake but something ongoing. Over the next few days, I compiled everything: texts, photos, even her call logs. I knew she was careless, maybe too confident, thinking I wouldn't find out. While she was out running errands, I sneaked into her closet. I found her secret stash, hidden beneath a loose panel in the back. There I uncovered a collection of her favorite lingerie, a few love letters she'd kept from him, and a box with more photos. She'd gone all out, fully invested in this affair. Seeing it all in one place made me feel sick, but I knew I needed this. It was my ammunition. Meanwhile, I was also watching her routines, looking for the right moment. She was predictable in some ways, always home by a certain time, always on her phone in the same spots. I knew I couldn't confront her now. That would blow everything up. Instead, I started laying the groundwork. I wanted her to know I had something she wouldn't be able to explain away. The plan was simple but cruel in a way. I decided to set a trap, something to make her realize I wasn't going to stand for her betrayal. I changed my social media password, made sure she couldn't access my accounts, then I started posting things that hinted I was onto her. I uploaded a few photos of her car parked at his place, timestamps included. Nothing explicit, just enough to make her nervous. One night I called her in for a talk. Her eyes flickered with suspicion as she sat across from me, her hands clenched in her lap. "You think I don't know what you've been doing?" I said, voice low but steady. She looked away, silent. "I've got all the proof," I continued. "Your texts, your secret stash, you're not so clever after all." Her face went pale and she tried to deny it, but I could see the cracks. I told her I had plans and she looked worried. Good. That was what I wanted, to make her understand that I knew everything she tried to hide. I knew I had to escalate, but I also knew I couldn't just storm out and scream. I had to be strategic. I told her I was hurt but not broken, that I wanted her to feel what I felt: devastation, betrayal, the loss of trust. I refused to be the victim who quietly took it. I would take control. The next day I doubled down. I left her little hints like unreturned texts and mysterious phone calls. I wanted her to realize that I wasn't just going to forgive and forget. I was preparing to fight back, to even the odds. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I knew I was going to make her regret ever crossing that line. And she started to notice. She'd glance at me nervously when she thought I wasn't looking, her face tense. The facade was cracking, and I relished every second of her discomfort. I kept pushing just enough to make her feel trapped, because I knew something she didn't. My revenge was only just beginning. "Would you like me to continue with the next part?" The tension between us was thick like fog. Every little thing she did seemed to set me off more. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, and somehow that rush of adrenaline kept me going. The more she looked nervous, the more I knew she was starting to realize I was serious about exposing her. I'd set the stage, and now it was just a matter of timing. One afternoon, she left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter. It was like an invitation. I didn't hesitate. I picked it up, my fingers trembling slightly, and unlocked it with the knowledge I'd gained. I scrolled through her messages, more than I'd seen before. Some were casual, but a few made my stomach churn. There were flirtatious exchanges, plans to meet, and even some late-night calls that she'd kept secret. I copied everything, took screenshots, then deleted my traces. I kept her phone exactly as it was. No one was supposed to suspect I'd been snooping. But I knew I had what I needed. That night I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the evidence. I felt sick but also strangely empowered. That evening I decided it was time for the confrontation. I called her from my blocked number, pretending to be someone else. I told her I knew everything. Her voice cracked. "Who is this?" she asked, trying to sound annoyed. "Let's just say I know what you've been up to," I said. "You're not as clever as you think." She paused, then started to deny everything. It was pathetic, really. Her voice was trembling and I could hear her trying to cover her tracks, but I had her cornered. "Don't bother," I said. "I've got the proof. I know about the late-night calls, the secret meetings, everything." There was silence on the other end, then she finally snapped. "You're crazy, you're just paranoid." "No, I'm not," I shot back. "And you're going to regret this. You should have been honest with me from the start." I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want her to spiral completely, but I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal. I told her I was done, that I didn't want to see her again, at least not until she figured out what she really wanted. After that call, I started making a few more moves. I changed the locks on the house, took photographs of everything, and planned my next steps. I didn't want to just walk away. I wanted her to feel the loss, the guilt, the chaos she'd brought on herself. That night, I packed a small bag, not knowing exactly what I was going to do next, but knowing I had to get out. I left her a note on the kitchen table. "It's over. Don't try to contact me. I've seen enough." I didn't want to scream or shout. I just wanted her to understand that I was done playing her game. As I walked out that door, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Was I just giving her what she wanted, an easy way out? Or was this the only way I could regain some control? I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside. And in that moment I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd taken the first step toward revenge, but I knew her reaction would come soon enough, and I was more prepared than ever to see this through. Would you like me to proceed with the next part? The next few days felt like walking on thin ice. I stayed low, watching her from a distance, waiting for her reaction. I knew she'd try to spin it, deny everything, maybe even come crawling back. But I wasn't going to let her. Not this time. I'd laid the groundwork, and now I was ready to make her see what she'd lost and what I could do to make her regret it. I kept my phone silent, but I had a plan in motion. I'd already taken steps to ensure she'd realize I was serious. I'd sent a few anonymous messages, just enough to make her panic. A simple text, nothing revealing. "I know what you've done. It's only a matter of time." Nothing more, just enough to keep her on edge. Meanwhile, I was preparing a proper confrontation. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. I decided to turn her own game against her. I reached out to a private investigator, someone discreet but thorough. I paid him to follow her to gather proof of where she was going, who she was meeting. I needed to see her in the act, if she was still playing with my brother or if she'd moved on to someone else. One evening, I saw her leaving the house, looking over her shoulder nervously. I followed her at a distance. She drove to a nearby cafe, then disappeared into the back room with a man I didn't recognize at first. My stomach twisted. What if she was cheating again? I snapped pictures from a safe distance, my fingers numb. When she finally came out, I saw the way she looked at him, the way her body language betrayed her. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept calm. I knew I had what I needed. I returned home, sat in the dark, and studied the photos. This was it, the proof I needed to make her pay. The piece of the puzzle I'd been waiting for. I knew I couldn't do this quietly anymore. I had to be direct. Next day I confronted her again, this time with the evidence. Her face drained of color when I laid the photos on the table. "This is what you've been hiding," I said, voice cold and steady. "And you thought you could keep lying to me. You're still seeing him." She tried to deny it, but her voice cracked. "You don't understand. He's just a friend. It's not what you think." "Save it," I shot back. "I saw the way you looked at him. I have proof of everything. This isn't just about your betrayal with my brother. This is about a complete lack of respect for what we had." Her shoulders shook, and she looked like she wanted to break down, but I wasn't done. I told her I was prepared to end this once and for all, that I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to decide if she wanted to be honest. I explained I had a plan, one that would force her to confront what she'd done, and I told her I didn't want her to come back. Not unless she was ready to face the consequences. In that moment, I saw her. Realized that I'd gone from the hurt guy to someone who was willing to do whatever it took. I think that's when she understood she'd pushed me too far. She tried to plead, but I shut her down. "You've lost me," I said, voice steely. "And I'm done playing your game." That day I handed her the keys to the house and told her to leave. I wasn't about to stay in a place filled with lies and betrayal. I was done being the fool. I was ready to rebuild without her. As she gathered her things, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief mixed with bitterness. I'd finally taken control. She'd betrayed me, yes, but I'd also shown her that I wasn't going to be her doormat anymore, that I could turn her own lies against her. The house was silent after she left, the air heavy with 1,000 unspoken words. I sat alone, feeling the coldness seep into my bones, but also a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do next. It was time to move on, to find a way to heal. But one thing was clear: no matter how much it hurt, I'd never let anyone betray me like that again. Not unless I was the one doing the betraying. And that, I guess, is the real lesson. Would you like me to continue with the final part? The days after she left felt like a blur. I kept busy packing up her belongings, loading them into boxes. Every item she left behind was a reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained in that moment of taking back control. The house felt colder, emptier. I could still hear her voice in my head trying to justify what she'd done, but I refused to let it break me again. I sat on the sofa, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. Yeah, I was broken, but I was also stronger. I'd revealed her lies, exposed her betrayal, and made her face the consequences. Now it was really over, or so I told myself. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. I knew I'd have to move forward somehow. I wasn't sure what that looked like yet, but I knew. I couldn't keep living in the past. That evening, I finally sat down and reflected on everything. It was raw. It was honest. I admitted to myself that I'd been naive. I'd trusted her blindly, believed in the perfect future we'd planned. But that trust had been shattered, and I'd been too blind to see the signs. Still, I told myself I'd come out of this stronger. I'd learned how to stand up for myself, how to recognize red flags before they turned into disasters. I'd learned that sometimes love isn't enough to fix a broken person. That betrayal runs deep and leaves scars, but it also teaches you who you really are. I knew I'd have to rebuild my life piece by piece. No more excuses, no more justifications. I needed to find a way to move on, to heal. I started focusing on things I enjoyed: going to the gym, reconnecting with friends, rediscovering my passions. It was a slow process, but each day I felt a little more like myself. One night I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker. The cool breeze brushed my face, and I realized something. No matter how much I'd been hurt, I wasn't going to let her or anyone else define me. I was in charge of my future now. That thought made my stomach settle and my heartbeat slowed. I also knew I'd have to be smart about future relationships. No more rushing, no more blind trust. I'd learned a tough lesson that love alone isn't enough. Trust has to be earned every single day. I told myself I'd be cautious but not afraid, because fear was what kept me from seeing the truth sooner. Looking back, I know I'll never forget the pain, but I also know I'll never let it control me again. I'll carry the scars, sure, but I'll wear them like armor. I'll be wiser, stronger, and more careful. That's the real revenge: learning how to rebuild, how to trust again on my own terms. So I took one last look around the empty house, then handed over the keys at the real estate office. It felt strange, almost symbolic, like closing a chapter I never wanted to begin in the first place. I signed the papers, took a deep breath, and walked out of that place for good. Sometimes, revenge isn't about doing something destructive. It's about reclaiming what's yours: your dignity, your peace, your future. And I realized that in the end, the best revenge is simply moving on and proving to yourself that you're stronger than the betrayal. Would you like me to finish with the final part? In the weeks that followed, I kept my head down and focused on rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Every corner of my life had been turned upside down, and trust was a fragile thing I had to carefully piece back together. I found myself sitting in new cafes, meeting new people, trying to sweep away the memories of her betrayal. Every step felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was still standing, still fighting to reclaim my life. One day, I went to the courthouse and filed for divorce. Signing those papers was like ripping off a bandage that had been stuck to my skin for too long. The process was cold, clinical, but necessary. I handed over the final paperwork, watching as the clerk processed everything. That was the moment I knew I was officially free. Free from her lies, her betrayal, her broken promises. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with an odd emptiness. It was like closing a chapter I desperately wanted to forget, but one that forever changed me. I looked at the sky, feeling the cool wind slap my face, and I realized I was finally starting to breathe again. I had survived. Reflecting on everything, I understood something crucial. Love is fragile, trust is even more so. If you don't protect it, it can be wiped out in an instant. But what I'd learned was more powerful. I am stronger than any betrayal. No matter how deep the cut, I can heal. I can rebuild. I don't need someone else to define my worth. I make that decision myself. I took a moment to think about what I'd tell anyone in a similar situation. First, don't ignore the red flags. They're there for a reason. Second, gather your evidence. Don't let heartbreak blind you to the truth. Third, don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes, the only way to truly reclaim your power is to cut the cord completely. And finally, heal at your own pace. It's not about rushing to forget. It's about learning how to live again, paragraph by paragraph. Looking back, I knew I'd be okay. The pain would fade, the scars would remain, but I'd be stronger. I'd learned the hard way that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about taking control of your own story. The story of someone who was broken but refused to stay that way. Someone who chose to start over no matter how difficult. So I took a deep breath, turned my face to the sun, and walked forward. The future was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure: I was finally free. And that, for me, was the greatest victory of all.